Hello, hello, everyone. It is the first LinkedIn Live for experienced investigators in the year 2025. I can't believe we're here either. I'm Jeannie Walters. I'm so happy that you're here today. We are talking all about customer experience strategy, how to implement it, how to make sure you have a plan for the year. And I'm so excited because we also have our friend Paige here with us. Paige, welcome.
Hi.
Hi. Happy I know we can't say Happy New Year anymore according to
I feel like through January we can. Like
Oh,
it's
okay.
like the new month, like the first new month of the year, but maybe that's just me.
Larry David said it's after like January 7th. You can't say Happy New Year, but we can make our own rules.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to trudge forward with our Happy New Year.
So we hope everybody out there is having a Happy New Year as well. And, this is the time of year we try new things. We have plans, we have goals. So are you tackling anything new this year, Paige?
Oh, let's see. So I definitely have made it on my list to revamp all of my like singing stuff. So I'm going to be premiering a singer's site this year,
Ooh.
which makes me
Oh,
feel so fancy.
I can't wait. I can't wait. For those of you just joining us, you may not know Paige is also a professional, classically trained opera singer. She's amazing at what she does. So we can't wait because then we'll be able to find all
Wow,
the
my videos and all my
fantastic.
pictures from fun places, so it'll be fun.
Nice. And
It'll
the
be fun
pretty
putting it
and the
together.
pretty dresses.
Yeah, all the pretty dresses.
I
What
love
about
it.
you? What are you up? What are you doing this year?
So, just the usual kind of big things where I want to have like a perfectly organized house and be super healthy and all those things.
Of
But
course.
then the thing I'm really trying to tackle this year is I used to know how to play chess and I've kind of forgotten over the years. So, and I haven't played in a long time. And my son, the teenager, he is very into chess. And so he's encouraging me to do it. So I'm using an app and I'm taking little lessons and I'm trying to cram all those rules into my head again because there are so many.
So many rules.
Yeah.
And then
So,
some of them, like you get the rules down, and then it's like, but this piece is
yes,
these rules and these rules together.
yes. And I make kind of silly mistakes right now all the time when I'm playing. And so my goal is to get to a point where I can play against him and he won't be like, well, that was easy to get you in 5 minutes. So,
My husband and I actually started playing. We go to this place in downtown Kansas City that is so cool. It's like a library and a bar all in one.
fun.
And they have chess tables built in. And so we decided, well, if we're going to have an espresso martini, at least we can do something with our time. And we've
There you
started
go.
chess. I've never won, but I'm playing.
You know what? It's still something to do that's good for your mind and, it's interesting and all those things. So,
Yeah.
maybe next time we're in the same place, we'll try to play chess against each other and then you will win.
That's going to be a long game.
You will. No, I think it'll be short. I think you'll win. So, well, what are you doing this year and where are you joining us from? We love hearing that. We already are seeing some greetings from Cameron.
Yeah.
Awesome. Nice. So, I, love this topic, as many of you know, because I really believe that as customer experience leaders, we need to step up. We need to define the strategy because that's the only way we can really take control of our success. Harvey agrees with me back there. He is settling in for his Friday nap. But uh, yes, we always love to hear from you. And as we jump into this topic, as always, questions are welcome. So drop those in. Paige will be sharing different links and things like that. But yeah, let us know what are you working on this year, or if you just want to let us know like that you think you're going to learn chess too, or anything like that. We love hearing from you. So
Yes.
join us. Yes. All right. Why don't we jump into this topic? It's a big one for the start of the year and go from there. So, thank you all so much for joining me, first of all, because we are so thrilled that I was thinking about it. I think this is the fifth year that we have been doing these LinkedIn Lives on a regular basis. And it is really something that we love doing. We love hearing from you. And this is all built on what we hear from you. So if there are specific questions, content items, things you want us to cover, we want to hear that. We want to know what can we do to serve you. As you might know, the mission of my organization is to create fewer ruined days for customers. And that's because we really believe it creates a better world. And you being here today, you are helping us live that mission. So thank you so much for all that you do, because our goal is to empower you to do that and make sure that you have what you need to succeed. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jeannie Walters. I am the founder and CEO of Experience Investigators, where we are really dedicated to your success. I personally believe customer experience is a winning business strategy. This is not just an opinion. There's lots of data to back this up. And so I want to make sure that you have the tools, the support, the confidence to make sure you can lead where you are. You can find lots of resources. We have several courses at LinkedIn Learning, so check those out. And then in our learning center at experienceinvestigators.com, we also have a ton of things. And if you've missed any of these live sessions, they're all on our YouTube channel, so check that out as well. I also wanted to invite you to a special event. Now, today we are going to be talking about strategy in a pretty high level way. This webinar that we have coming up, this is a special webinar for our clients, our followers, folks like that, who want to really understand how do we position ourselves to get that return on investment for customer experience. Now, part of that is a customer-centric mindset, but that's not the only part. And what does that really mean? How can you implement that? That's what we're going to really share during this webinar. I encourage you to check that out. We'll also have some special offers for you at the end of that as well. So please sign up. You can use that QR code, or you can use that link. And Paige, if you can drop that link in the chat, that would be great. And so once you sign up, even if you can't attend, we will go ahead and follow up with you with that recording as well. So I hope you will. I hope you'll be there. We will have a live Q&A at the end as well, so bring your questions. All right, so let's jump in. So when we talk about customer experience, there are a couple of things that I see happen again and again and again. One is that people say, well, of course, customer experience is important. And of course, everybody should understand that. And that's all we have to say about that. And they think that just kind of mentioning it will be the magic that we need to make it happen. When it becomes something that is kind of seen as fairy dust that we sprinkle on things, it's not really taken seriously. It's not given the oxygen, the support that it needs to really flourish. And so, yeah, you might have certain leaders who really do get it. You might have certain people, especially those on the front line, who really do get it. And they're doing what they can with what they have, but they don't have structure, support, goals that are well defined. And so what happens is it just becomes something we talk about. After a while, people start saying, well, I don't know, we've got these people with customer experience in their title, or we're investing in all these surveys and feedback mechanisms, but what's that about? And when that happens, people start, just assuming that talking about it is enough. And so we don't need that structure. And really, that's because we don't define a strategy around it. And Larry, I see that you dropped in something about the gap between what leaders believe and what is actually delivered by brands. That is absolutely true. There is a huge gap in what customers feel like their experience is versus the brands that deliver on them. So we have to define not just how are we listening to customers, but why are we listening to customers? What are we doing with that information? What are the outcomes that will be beneficial for the business? And how do we prioritize around those? Because if we're not careful, everything can feel like a priority in customer experience. Everything can feel urgent. Everything can feel like we're just reacting to everything all the time. And the best leaders here, they are proactive and intentional. And if you've been with us a while, you know I use those words a lot, because proactive and intentional customer experiences are what drive meaningful business results. So sometimes I make the comparison of if we treated customer experience like other parts of the organization or vice versa. I encourage you to think about what would happen if a sales team or a supply chain team or a field distribution team, any of them, came to their executive committee and said, "Yeah, our goal this year is to be better. We're just really going to be better. So that's our goal." I mean, they would be laughed out of the room because that's not enough. That's not defined. So when we talk about customer experience strategy, we have to show up like business people. We have to make sure that we are defining what success looks like. And that is more than just saying, we're going to have a great customer experience. We're going to be better. We're going to be friendlier. We're going to get higher customer scores on our surveys. None of those are real goals. Some of those are measurements, but none of those are real goals. So we have to make sure that we are showing up as the leaders we are. We are defining success, defining a strategy, and then executing on that strategy in a way that makes sense to our organization and our leaders, not just improving things for customers. Sometimes that's what I hear too is, well, we just need to keep improving things for customers. Yes, you absolutely do. But our role as customer experience leaders is to define what that means and how we can prioritize the best improvements to make so we get better results for the customer and our organization. So every department or business function needs a strategy. Customer experience is no exception. No exception. If you don't have a defined strategy, if you don't feel empowered to define a strategy, I encourage you to do what you can to challenge that, to go to your leadership, to say, this is what I want to do with customer experience. This is why it's important. These are the results that we're getting. I encourage you to really step up and be courageous this year and set that strategy. Because if you don't, they will make assumptions about how important customer experience really is. Well, maybe it's not that important. Well, maybe we've gotten to the point. This is the other thing I hear a lot. Maybe we've gotten to the point where everybody understands. So that's all we need to do. But if we don't get intentional about it, then it's going to be something that nobody is measured against, nobody is held accountable for, nobody is really looking after the customer in the way that we need. So your strategy needs to reflect where your organization currently stands with its customer experience, and then define a clear vision for where you can go next. With this well-defined strategy, you will get to tangible business outcomes. That is more than saying we're going to improve net promoter score or get higher customer satisfaction rates. That is more than saying, well, we're going to improve 5 things on our list this month. It is about real business outcomes, things like improved customer retention, a stronger brand reputation, fewer or faster revenue generation. Sometimes you have to flip the script and look at how can you reduce expenses? How much does it cost to serve a customer? How many refunds are we giving because of bad customer experience? Those are the types of questions to ask to make sure that you can really get this lens right so you can define things in the right way. So these are the core elements. Again, we're going to go over this pretty high level today. We have a somewhat robust article about this that we released this month that I encourage you to go check out, and also join us for that webinar if you really want to dive into that ROI question. So the core elements: a vision, a mission, success strategy statement. You want to understand your customer touch points. And then finally, how do we measure all this stuff? How do we make sure we're measuring the right things for success? So as we go through this today, I really want you to think about your CX vision and goals, defining those in a way. If your goal is, well, we're going to provide the best customer experience to every customer every time, or something like that, I would ask you, how do you know? How do you know if you're doing that? And is that realistic? We have to be realistic. We have to make sure that we are defining things that are achievable, attainable, and something we can actually measure. We want to, of course, understand our customers deeply, deeply. That means more than just asking for that would you recommend question. NPS in general has been overused and used to the point where sometimes it's not meaningful. Not every time, but sometimes it's not meaningful. So we have to be careful with how we're measuring, what we're measuring, when we're measuring, all of those things. We also have to make sure we're not just relying on those objective numbers, that we are looking at our customers as the humans that they are. We want to map and optimize customer touch points and make sure that we understand what happens when they are in their actual journey. And then we want to develop a CX implementation plan. Now, all of this relates to how do we measure? Measure and refine, measure and refine. Reporting on measurements is not actually doing work. I hate to say that, but it's true. Reporting on measurements actually is not moving the company forward. What moves the company forward is learning from those measurements, finding insights, and turning those insights into action that will drive your business forward. So, this is a big one. This is a big one because it's so important. And yet, many, many organizations never get here. They never get here. We talk to so many organizations. They call us and they say, "We need help with customer experience." We say, "Great. What are you trying to do?" Well, our defined, vision is to create the best customer experience. Okay, great. What does that mean? What does that mean? And we must ask that question on so many calls. And I'm smiling at Paige. She doesn't know it, but I'm smiling at her because we have to ask that question so many times. What does that mean to you? And they cannot define it. They cannot define it, but they're being held accountable to this amorphous, vague thing that somebody said in a meeting. So, this is what I want you to do this year in 2025. I want you to get so serious about defining what customer experience means in your organization that there is no question about what success looks like. If you can do that, it will make everything else easier. You will be able to prioritize. You will be able to understand, who do you need on your team to make this happen? What tools do you need? What processes are in place or not? All of that is wrapped around the definition of success. So when we talk about vision and goals, this is kind of a big bucket, right? But this is really about your foundation. We do this a couple different ways. One is making sure that we have a very clear customer experience mission statement. Now, this is not separate completely from your overall brand statements or, vision, mission, values for your company. This all fits together. But many of those organizational ones do not really talk about customers. They don't talk about, what are you trying to do for your customers? What are you trying to make sure that you are delivering so that they can do something? Our customers don't care about our products and service. They care about what those products and services can do for them. So we have to get really clear on, what is that? We also have to get clear on, who are we exactly? What are the trade-offs that sometimes we have to make? What are the promises that we can live up to? So we want to be very transparent about, who are we today? What is the customer experience today? And then what can we accomplish in a clearly defined time frame? So we have the mission, and then we want to get really clear on that time frame of, okay, what can we do this year? What's realistic? What makes sense? And that's where the strategy success statement is so important. If you don't have these tools, we have lots and lots of resources for you. I would also recommend you check out my CX Foundations and my CX Trends courses on LinkedIn Learning. And then the next step in that would be the operationalizing CX. So we have all of that available. I, again, encourage you to join us on the webinar as well. Of course, this is usually where people start. This is usually where customer experience kind of grows within an organization. Somebody says, we need to listen to our customers more. Of course we do. So how do we do that? Well, we want to make sure that we are, of course, asking for their opinion, understanding who they are. And sometimes this starts with personas, customer personas. This is where we segment and understand what customers have different goals, have different challenges, all of those different things. So customer personas are really about a group of customers, but I want you to think about that individual customer whenever you're really trying to understand your customers deeply. Because sometimes it's easy to think, well, this is how it works for the group, and it's very easy. If you get into who they really are, what their challenges are, That will enlighten you to some of the things that maybe are not as easy to see when we group things. One thing I like to say, especially when we're talking about journey mapping and survey design and things like that, is think about your worst customer on their worst day. That will give you more learning than thinking about your best customer on their best day. Because that customer who is so challenging, they are giving you feedback that you better listen to. They are giving you the gift of that feedback. So while personas are great because they're a tool to help us get closer to our customers, no one person behaves the same way all the time. This is what drives me crazy sometimes when I hear people say things like, well, our digital customers do this and our in store customers do this. When was the last time you thought to yourself, it's a good thing I'm a digital customer, right? We don't think that way as people. We often will think, well, gosh, I got that online. I wonder if I can return it in the store. So it's context, it's scenario, it's all of those things. So we have to make sure that we are understanding not just the customer in that one touch point, but the whole customer and the whole customer journey. So these are tools, not mandates, because sometimes I see organizational leaders make decisions based on, well, that persona will only do this when this happens. We do some work in the travel industry, and one of the things that I've pushed back on sometimes, they say things like, well, women business travelers do XYZ. And then they'll say, well, families behave this way. Well, guess what? I am, you know, 80% of the time a business traveler. But then when I travel with my family, I'm still that same person. And in fact, I have different expectations because I'm a business traveler traveling with my family. So we can't separate people into these boxes so squarely that we miss opportunities to really understand our customers and understand who they are and their needs. This all relates back to those foundations. Who are you, no matter what, to your customers? What are the promises that you've made? And what are you trying to do for your organization? What will make the most sense? How can you prioritize? Because none of us have unlimited resources. So, how can you make sure that you're maximizing the investment to get the highest return on that investment? That all comes down to really defining success. So, keep listening to your customers and watching behaviors to really understand their nuances and differences. And customer expectations are changing more rapidly than ever. We all are experiencing this both as customers and within our businesses. And customers are having more what I'll call macro concerns as well around things like sustainability and environmental impact. So we have to pay attention to those trends as well and make sure that we understand our customers are not just our customers. They are well-rounded humans. They are customers not only in their role with us, but in all these different ways. And so, how can we support them in the best possible way? We also want to use AI right now. I always want to put a little, asterisk here saying that it's really important to understand your industry regulations, your regional expectations around this. There are different laws and regulations coming into place all around the world right now around this, as well as understanding the data privacy concerns that are real when we use generative AI. So make sure that you understand what the proper use is where you are. But these are some ideas for you to really leverage Gen AI if you do have that ability. One is you can really make sure that you are identifying patterns in a faster way. This can be so helpful when we are developing personas. You want to assess your internal data resources, make sure that you have all of that, gather customer data. You want to feed the data into your tool and then upload your existing customer personas. And you can ask AI to compare the two and say, is this still legitimate? Are we missing anything? If you were me, how would you prioritize these personas for this project if our goal is XYZ? So you really want to get specific here, but there are different ways you can use AI. We actually just talked about this in our CXI membership forum, and I really believe that there are so many ways that we can tap into this. But again, you have to be very, very careful. Do not put your customer data just out into the world. So all of you, please pay attention to the rules. Talk to your cybersecurity folks, talk to your data folks, make sure that you have a really clear understanding of the best way to use this where you are. But there are different ways you can do this without even using real data too. You can ask questions about if this is the persona, what do you think they would think about this decision, or what decision would they make tomorrow? And there are different ways you can do that in generalized ways as well. But I encourage you to explore that because it's here. We are using it. Your competitors are using it. And if you are not leaning into it, you are probably missing out on ways to get faster, more efficient, and just keep up in a very highly paced world. And of course, we want to look at customer touch points. This is really about the entire journey, right? We want to make sure that we understand the entire journey from when a customer becomes aware of our brand or even before, all the way through to when they leave us or they stay with us forever and refer all their friends. So we want to make sure that we are looking at the actual touch points that are most important to these personas. This is part of just really knowing our customers very well. This is where we can be proactive and intentional in really powerful ways. Because if we understand their journey, if we understand the persona, and if we understand our clearly defined goals and what success looks like, then we can prioritize improvements to these different touch points. Maybe we know that people are moving away from shopping in store. Well, what does that mean? Could we actually provide things that are mobile that will either encourage them to go into the store, or are there things that we want to make sure are just more accessible to people? Are there ways that we can leverage being proactive just to make the experience a little bit better? Are there notifications? Are there things that we can help them with about knowing and feeling reassured that they are working with a great brand? There are all sorts of ways to look at this, but really this is about understanding what they seek, what each customer seeks at each step of their journey, and how we can really maximize that, how we can make them feel so good, not just about making a purchase with us, but about long term, what that experience looks like. We want to evaluate each customer touch point for its consistency with those foundational pieces. Does it live up to our customer experience mission? Does it fit with our success statement? And does it actually meet our customer needs? Some of you, I'm sure, will be like, we're supposed to exceed our customer needs. Yes, that's great when we can do that. But if we're not even meeting them, that's a bigger problem. So if you have to prioritize, look for places where if you're not doing the basics well, it really doesn't matter how many bells and whistles you have. So make sure that you are constantly looking at who is our customer? What do we know about them? What are we trying to do? What is the promise that we've made? And are we really living up to that along every step of their journey? Then we want to develop a CX implementation plan. So this is where we want to make sure that we are aligning everybody within the organization around this idea of customer experience success and what is our mission and all of those things. So this requires ongoing alignment. This requires a lot of communication, a lot of socialization of different ideas, different projects, different, goals. We want to make sure that everybody understands that yes, everybody has a role to play, but I caution you against saying, well, this is everybody's job, because then it becomes nobody's job. So we have to make it real for people as well. So we want to communicate about what we're doing in these customer experience efforts constantly. And we want to tie that to this is why it's important. You'll remember our customer experience mission is this. This helps us live up to that mission. You'll remember we've defined success this way. By investing in this project, we are actually going to get closer to that goal, those outcomes that we've defined. We want to invest in CX education for employees, making sure they understand that, yes, they are a part of this. I have given a lot of workshops and training and keynotes at different organizations. And one thing that happens almost every time is somebody comes up to me afterwards and they say, well, I really didn't understand why I was invited to this because I'm in fill in the blank, accounting, supply chain, distribution, product. And then afterwards they say, okay, I understand now. I actually have a part to play. Like what I do inside the organization impacts the customer experience. And that is one of my favorite things is seeing that seeing those light bulbs go off. Because if you are never exposed to customer experience, if you are never exposed even to what customers are sharing, then it's really easy to just put your head down and go to work, right? If I'm in accounting and all I'm doing all day is sending out invoices and making sure people have paid, then that doesn't feel necessarily like I'm part of the customer experience. But that's a huge part of the customer experience. We have to make sure that we are educating people on their roles and where they fit in this customer journey and how they have an impact on the success of the customer experience and how that success drives our business success, our organizational success. All of that has to be a constant kind of rotation of communication and inspiration and training and education and all of those things. And then, of course, so much of this has to do with the employee experience. It is very difficult to achieve a great customer experience if you have miserable employees or if you have an employee experience where they don't really understand where they fit. They don't understand how to engage with the customer experience. They never hear the great feedback about how their contribution helped deliver something for the customer. So we want to make sure that we are prioritizing a great employee experience as well. And the good news is a lot of the best practices from customer experience can be applied to employee experience. You can absolutely conduct employee journey mapping, figuring out what does this look like? How can we improve it? You can absolutely use things like what they call ENPS, employee NPS, to find out how are employees feeling? Would they recommend this to their friends as a place to work? You can absolutely have some ways that they can anonymously contribute feedback and qualitative feedback that lets you know how they're really feeling. There are so many places from customer experience that we can pull over into employee experience, and it makes a huge difference. And then, better yet, you look at those two things together and you say, okay, our customers are telling us that they're not as happy as they were a year ago. And look at this, our employees are telling us the same thing. So that gives you an idea of where to kind of pull a lever to make the change, the positive change that you want. And then this is all about measurement. We need to make sure that we know what to measure. And that's why having goals like we're just going to differentiate with CX isn't really a goal. That's not a goal. We have to define what that means. So we want to make sure that we are not only using customer feedback metrics like NPS and like customer satisfaction rate, but we are using operational metrics like, hey, are people renewing their contract? Are they calling our customer service line more often? Are they, you know, not referring as much as they used to in the past? All of those things, those are real numbers that we can track without asking customers. Those just are part of business. So get real about where are the operational metrics you can track and where are the feedback metrics you can track, and look to really understand how you can learn from that. And then we want to partner with sales and support reps to know what they need because they're the ones interacting directly with customers. How can we support them more effectively? And then we want to run through each customer journey to find those hurdles, find the challenges, smooth out the rough edges, take away that friction, all of those things. So all of this is around a bigger strategy. None of these are magic wands. None of these are perfect. What I'm telling you is we as business leaders need to understand that by looking at the right metrics, by understanding our customers deeply, by using some of the tools and best practices, we will have a better chance at success than if we don't do those things all together. So if somebody comes to you and says, oh, we track NPS and that's all we do, they are expecting that to be a magic wand. It is not. There is no one magic metric. There is no one magic way to do this. Journey maps are great, but they are a tool, right? Service blueprinting is great. It is a tool. All of those things. Education and training, so important, but you can't expect people to have one training session and go off and be experts. So we need to constantly look at How can we go back to our strategy? How can we make sure we're focusing on the right things? And how can we get leaders throughout our organization to give us the support and the cross functional leadership we need in order to really deliver on this for our customers and our organizations? So these are 5 steps, high level. I know it sounds like a lot. Go ahead and check out that article, check out the other resources we have. And really, this is about enabling you to have a truly customer centric brand. People talk about that a lot. We hear that phrase a lot. We're going to be customer centric, or we are customer centric. But if you're still focusing on things like just your product roadmap as the end all of everything, you might not be as customer centric as you think. And so, no matter where you are in your customer journey, your customer experience journey, the idea of having a well defined customer experience strategy that will make things easier by giving you that direction to drive meaningful improvements and prove your results. We are being asked over and over again, what is the ROI on customer experience? What's your value? What's your worth as a leader? This gives you a tool to do that because you can use it. You can get everybody to agree that this is the outcome we want. These are the ways that we're defining success, and then you want to move forward. So my question to you is, what action can you take today to make a customer's journey easier and define it against your strategy? So with that, I will open up to a few questions. And I know we got a few from email. This was a hot topic. So I know we already have a few in the hopper there. So
We
yeah.
sure do. So, our first that we have here is, what are some common pitfalls CX leaders should avoid when rolling out a new CX strategy?
Good question. So I think the biggest thing that I see is that we have to keep educating. And what I mean by that is we are sometimes asked to define a strategy around the wrong thing in customer experience. So if somebody says to a customer experience leader, well, the strategy should be that NPS needs to go up, that's not a strategy. That is an outcome. That's a measurement. But the only way to do that is to make sure that we know, what does success look like? What are we working on? How can we get the right people and the right teams involved to actually make the improvements? Because if your net promoter score is going down because your sales team just lost, 5 of your superstars that had great relationships with everybody, well, the customer experience leader cannot affect that. That is a sales issue that you need to get them involved. You need to make sure that, look for ways that you can pull the best practices from those people and reach out and rebuild those relationships. So make sure that your strategy is based on your organizational goals, your leadership goals, and what you can actually do about it. So that means that we need to define things well beyond customer feedback metrics. So that's one pitfall. So in educating, what I mean by that is sometimes we have to say that. We have to say, I hear you. We want NPS to go up. We want more loyalty. My role will be to bring those issues and those insights forward. I need help to make sure that we can actually make those improvements. If you don't have a cross-functional team or a CX strategic council or something like that, that might be a great goal this year, because then you get that cross-functional leadership support across that. We have tools for you in our learning center as well, including a CX charter, which can be a really helpful tool. So as you're really, moving forward with the strategy and you're presenting it, make sure you are presenting things that your executives will hear as, this is going to help us. This is going to be more sales, more revenue, lower expenses, because every single organization in the world wants more revenue, lower expenses. It's really like, you can slice and dice that with sales goals and this goals and marketing and all of that, but really that's what every organization wants. So attaching things to those goals is super, super important so that your executives hear that. They need to understand that this is not a nice to have. This is something that will move the company forward. And then the other thing is just socializing a lot, making sure that you are inviting people into this area of the business. There are things like customer days you can do. You can invite people to hear different recordings from your call center. Those very human ways of doing things will help support the numbers that everybody else is looking at. So there's a lot that can be a pitfall, but I think that this is why having a defined strategy can be so, so helpful. And, a lot of our clients that we work on this with, they have real challenges around budget and around timelines and all of those things, right? We all do. And so that's why I always come back to be realistic as well. Like, if you say that you want to get adoption of a new CRM or something across your organization globally, but you haven't even picked the tool yet, that might not be realistic this year. So break it down into those steps and figure out what is actually realistic and make that your goal and make sure everybody understands why that's your goal. And that really is where things can really take off for you.
All right, we're cooking now. We got some
Mm.
questions here. Eric asks, what are the few things you can consistently infer from customers who reach out to support? As a customer success manager, I often see different inferences based on volume of request.
Great question. Yes, there are so many like nuances to this work, right? And that's part of what I love about it is it's not always it doesn't always fit neatly into a spreadsheet. Let's say that because we're dealing with humans and there are lots of ways that humans kind of interact, feel things, express those feelings, all of those things. So, what I would say is, first of all, I love that you mentioned volume of requests because I think that's something that often goes overlooked. If you see, a volume of things starting to happen, maybe not a spike, but like a gradual increase, that is a signal to really look at and say, what is really going on here? Now we have tools that can allow us to really zero in on that. Is it regional? Is it a certain product? Is it a certain timeline? I have seen things where right before a kind of group renewal place, those requests go up because people are starting to question the value of things. So once you know that in the pattern, then next year you can go, okay, well, we know that people start getting squirrely around this time and they start asking. So what can we do to really show them value a month, 2 months before that to make sure that they don't have as many requests? What can we do that is proactive and intentional? So that's one thing is the volume. I also think that we do have a lot of great tools now that, and they're getting better. They're not all perfect, but when we talk about sentiment, right? What are we hearing from customers that maybe they're not fitting into those categories that we have sometimes, but they're saying certain words. We're hearing things about frustration. We're hearing things about not feeling like they have the right information. All of those things can bubble up in some of those sentiment analysis as well. So I would look for that. And then again, you mentioned customer success manager. Hey, you all have a lot of information, right? You are talking to people, you are hearing it yourself. So I would actually talk to my fellow CSMs too and say, what are you hearing? I'm hearing this. Is this something that's happening? The challenge that we have, something I like to say is data is great, but it's always late because data is always about what's happened. And what we're trying to do is make sure we can get in front of it. And that's why understanding these kind of waves that maybe haven't quite made the alarm yet, they're not to the level where we're freaking out and we're saying, oh my gosh, we need to correct something. People are just giving us little signals like that. That's really, really important to look at. So volume, absolutely. Anything that implies a specific kind of hotspot like regional or product driven or time, those are things that you can sometimes infer from those types of things. And then really just figuring out what is the canary in the coal mine? What are people telling us that isn't quite making the list yet of things that are upsetting or that we need to look at, but we're all starting to see it, right? Like we're all starting to see that something's happening. Go ahead and talk about that and figure out if there are ways that you want to dig in more. The other thing I like to do is what I call micro mapping, which is if you feel like something's a little off, if you feel like there's something going on, just really dig into that part of the journey and figure out like what is happening here. Because the more that we can do that, the more we'll see that maybe the what we think is happening with customers isn't really happening with customers. This just happened with me as a customer. I was trying to use a chat feature and it was prompting like, is it this or this? And I kept saying other. And I would get in this cycle where it got to a point where I was trying to type in my question and it would say, oh, it looks like you're trying to start a new question. And it would give me the menu from the beginning again. There was no way for me to get through this chat because the categories that they had weren't what I was asking about. So we think that it's all mapped out, it's all perfect. And yet when we are micro mapping something like that, that's when we start seeing like, oh, I see what's going on here, right? So that's the other thing I would look at are kind of where are people coming from the journey. Sometimes it's harder to get this than others based on your tools, technology, all of that. But if you can look at, oh, were they just in chat and now they're all calling customer service? What's that about? Like, let's look into that. So there are so many ways to look at this, and it's a great question because I think it's a good reminder that we can't wait all the time for the data to come back and tell us that there's this big, huge problem that we saw coming. When we see it, we need to act. Good question.
Great question. Larry, our knowledgeable friend from Canada, asks, many companies' CX function is a one-person shop with less voice.
Mhm.
What are some recommendations to help folks build a voice and showcase the value of CX to the overall business?
Yes, and I totally empathize with this because you're right. They're either one person or a very small team, and they are often kind of tapped on the shoulder and said, "Guess what? You're in charge of customer experience." So this drives a lot of what we do here because we really do want to empower people with the right tools. One of the biggest tools we have, which is more of a skill, I guess, is storytelling, is making sure that we're not just reporting on numbers without connecting that to the humanity. The more we can connect to humanity, the more people will understand and connect. So we have lots of resources on storytelling, but one of the things that I see over and over is we call it a customer experience dashboard. It might have different pie charts and numbers and things like that. But if that's all it has, it's very easy for leaders to kind of brush that off. Because, first of all, those numbers might not change dramatically month to month. And again, we don't necessarily have the accountability or the authority to make the changes needed to change those numbers. But if we can share recordings from the call center, if we can share videos from customers, if we can share the voice of the people who are talking directly to our customers, if we can show the consequences of what happens when things go wrong, that's what gets people to understand. I bet many of us can relate to this idea because there are things that you might have been, reporting on for months. And then one customer complaint gets up the chain, right? They figure out the number of the VP or the CEO, and that customer reaches them directly. And guess what suddenly becomes a priority? And that's because they hear it, they understand it, they connect with that humanity. So that combined with showing what this does for the organization, defining that ROI and showing that ROI, the more you can connect those two things, the stronger your voice will be and the more people will listen. But it really is a challenge to have the the one person trying to change the world there. I always say though, like if you are that CX change agent out there, if you are the one person trying to make change, keep going because it started with one everywhere. So one person can make a difference, but you have to keep going. You have to make sure that you are speaking as a business person, as a leader, and you're tying that back to the humans that we serve.
Okay, Siva. Siva asks, what if leaders of an organization you work for are not focused on customer service training at all levels, but just focused on money and numbers?
Money numbers. Yes.
Oh,
So, this is a little bit of a tough one, and this could be more of an evolution rather than a revolution. And what I mean by that is sometimes what we have to do is kind of think about what is our sphere of influence? What can we actually do and get really clear on that? And if those are the folks that we are training to interact directly with customers, if there are customer service reps, our cashiers, whatever, great, let's start there. And then think about, okay, what's that next sphere of influence that we can relate to, that we can show has that connection to it. I'll give you an example in healthcare. There was a an assumption for years, years and years and years, that basically doctors could do no wrong, right? They were not part of the patient experience. They were just part of the, um, diagnosis, scientific. And in a way, this makes sense. We train doctors as scientists, and it's very important that they understand, scientific method and all those things. But what they found was that doctors were making assumptions about like their role as well, and they just didn't think it mattered. They didn't think their bedside manner mattered. They didn't think that they had to really care about the patient's emotions in some ways. Now, I am generalizing. I'm talking about things that happened a long, long time ago. Doctors are wonderful people and they are focused on this now, but this was kind of the attitude for a lot of years. What they realized was not only was that having a negative impact on actual patient results, but it was having a negative impact on the employee experience of the nurses, of the custodians, of all these other people. Then they started digging in and realized that, you know what? The person who cleans your room as a patient might have more influence over your patient outcomes than the doctor because of germs and infections. So, oh, Harvey is having himself a time right now. But so what they started to do was realize, okay, who has the most interaction with patients in a hospital? Usually the nurses. So they start with the nurses and they started talking to them about patient experience and what can we do to really support not just the, physical outcomes, but the emotional well-being of the patients while they're here. What can we do to reassure them? What can we do to make sure they have the right tools to succeed after they leave here? Then they kind of branched out and started working with doctors. What can we do to help them understand their role? Now, in medical school, not all medical schools, but in some medical schools, they are starting to include education around patient experience. How do we help patients? UCLA did a really interesting thing where they had a webcam. They would film the doctors in training, the residents, while they were talking to a patient. They didn't film the patient, they just filmed the doctor. And then they were able to go over with them, hey, what do you think about this? Because we heard from this patient afterwards that they did not feel heard, that they did not feel supported. So we have to kind of think about where do we know it's going to have an impact, and then how can we branch out from there? And the more you can do that, the more you can make those connections. But again, this all comes back to what are you trying to do for your organization? If your organization is trying to, improve customer experience across the board, and within your organization, people aren't talking to each other, people aren't delivering things on time, that has a direct impact on the customer experience. So talk about that. We've done this with a lot of B2B. And in business to business, sometimes there are a lot of assumptions about, well, you're either client facing or you're not, and never the two shall meet. And of course, if you're reaching out to me for product specs and I'm not getting back to you because it's not a priority, well, that impacts the customer experience. If you're reaching out to me because you want to know when something's going to be delivered and I'm not really trying to give you that information, or we don't have a process, or you don't have visibility into that, that will affect the customer experience. So make those connections as well, because every single thing in your organization impacts the customer experience. We need people to really wrap their arms around that. But I would encourage you to think about, where do you already have influence and authority, and then branch out from there.
Okay. Up next is Henny. What kind of data is most useful for creating segments that reflect nuanced customer behaviors rather than broad categories? I am wondering about how to balance the need for customized segmentation with the reality that no two customers behave the
Mhm.
same.
Yes, this is a tricky one, because it's so tempting to just segment everybody and be like, "Well, these are the customers who bought 2 or more products, and these are the customers who have been with us 10 years," and there is value in that because it makes our design and our implementation easier and all those things. There is real value in that. So, segmentation and personas are valuable, and I encourage you to think about that. The part that sometimes I get tripped up on is when we make them so specific that we assume too much about who they are and what they do. And so if we are saying things like, if we're organizing people like digital customers, I think that's short-sighted because all of us want choice as customers based on context, and we are whole people. So if you are segmenting so much that you are basically categorizing people into very specific boxes with no leeway, that's not a great way to do it. What I encourage my clients to do is number 1, be careful about demographic assumptions. And the reason I say this is because customer populations are changing, employee populations are changing, populations are changing. So we sometimes make assumptions based on what's happened. So uh, I have worked with an organization and they always were serving they're an engineering company and they were always serving a certain type of customer, and it was an older white guy who had graduated from an Ivy League school. Well, if you look at the data of what's happening today, more women are actually graduating college, more women are going into engineering, all these things. So, by assuming certain things about our customers that way and actually defining the persona that way, we're missing opportunities for innovation for the customers of the future. So, I like to really zero in on behaviors, on challenges, on understanding really their needs and what they're looking for from us, not so much about demographics and things like that. There are some cases where demographics make sense, but I'm just saying, like, be careful of that. The other thing that I like to do is use personas as a jumping off point. Absolutely. Because again, we want to get to action. We want to make sure we are making change in our organization. And if we're spending all of our time analyzing and developing personas for a year, that doesn't do anything. So get, kind of minimum viable persona and then use that to define your scope for customer journey mapping, your next steps around service blueprinting, your next set of priorities for improvements. There are so many ways to use personas for that. But to your point, we have to also accept that people are going to behave differently and we have to have options. People want choice. And so when we say things like, and during the pandemic, people learned this lesson as well, because there was all this assumption about people 65 and over will never use the internet, right? Like that was kind of the vibe at the time. And they were the fastest growing group. The minute they needed to, they figured it out, right? They needed groceries, they needed to order their groceries and get them delivered. They figured that out. So we have to think about the context of the choices as well. So segmentation and personas can be very, very helpful and a really good jumping off point. But I think our role as customer experience leaders is to continue to connect with the humanity of it, meaning, you know what? Not everybody's going to choose this from this group. We will give them offers. We will make sure. And the other thing I always emphasize, especially with journey mapping, is we have to give people a way out. We have to make sure that they understand where the exit latch is. That chat example I just gave you is a perfect example of that. There was no way out for me. There was no way that I had a way. It didn't say, hey, it looks like you need to call somebody, or here's something, fill this out if we didn't have the category for you. None of that. And so I think we always have to think about what if. What if it doesn't work the way we think? What if they have something outside of this? What if in this moment, this persona is behaving very differently, right? Um, Things happen in life. there's trauma, there is urgency, there are all these things that happen that make us behave differently. Well, we need to be aware of that. So, asking that what if question is super helpful. And I like to say, you ask, what if, what if, what if? What if it doesn't work? What if they can't find what they need? What if, you know, just keep going through what if, what if, what if? And that can help you with those persona developments as well. But yeah, good question. And I love that we're becoming more aware of this, because I think when we categorize people too strictly, we really do miss opportunities to serve them in the best possible way.
Eric has another question, and I just gotta let you know, just reading this question is gonna make me feel super cool. So, have you ever seen a CX champion with a green or black belt in Sigma methods of continuous measurement and improvement? I went through green belt training twice.
Nice.
Super cool. And it is very measurement focused.
It is very, yes, Six Sigma is one of those things that it felt like there was a period of time where I felt like it was everywhere and everybody was really dedicated to it. And now it kind of depends on the organization and everything. But congratulations, that's really exciting. And what we are, I have definitely seen combinations of this, and some of it is really to your point, because it's so measurement focused, sometimes the language doesn't match up with what we're talking about here when we talk about emotions and humanity and all of those things. So I love when people who have more analytical perspectives are passionate about customer experience, because I think that helps us get to that point where we're speaking the language of business people. However, I will give the same caution I gave a few minutes ago about when we're just reporting on measurements, we have to be careful about losing that connection to humanity. And so we have to make sure that some of the measurements are things like, we want to hear these things. We want people to behave a certain way, all of those things. So if you can combine those two things, that is glorious. That is fantastic. I have seen different variations of this. I'm not sure about exactly what belt, I'll be honest, but I know that there are people who have been well versed in Six Sigma and certified and all those things that have been CX champions. I think it's a matter of making sure that, I mean, it's like anything else, a framework, all of these tools, we have to make them our own. We have to make sure that we are adopting to the culture of our organization, understanding what our leaders care about, what they need to hear, all of those things. But yeah, I think it's a wonderful world when we can bring those pieces together, because guess what? That's how humans behave. We make decisions based on emotion, but we rationalize them with logic and data. We like symbolism, but at the same time, we need evidence. So that is how humans make decisions. That's how we move forward in the world. And so I think we need to embrace both sides of that, and using things like Six Sigma and these bigger kind of customer experience ideas and strategies. I think that would make a really, really great result.
I agree with that. We have some clients that have that mentality of
Mhm.
both sides. And when we're talking about like tying it to the larger goals with like success strategy, I feel like the vision is so
Mhm.
clear because they have both the human and that analytical mind.
Yes,
Really great.
exactly. Exactly.
Apologies if I pronounce your name wrong. I'm so sorry. Tativik asks, what what monitoring tools do you consider the most effective and productive?
Mm. This is where I give my little, disclaimer. It really depends. It really, really depends. There are so many out there now, and it depends on how large your organization is, the resources you have, the budget, what you're monitoring for, all of those things. And so I think that when we are looking for what works in today's world, it's very easy to be kind of pulled into a big tool with lots of bells and whistles, and it could be the right tool for you. However, if you don't need to track that much, if you are not able to act on that, then I would encourage you to get narrow about what you're really measuring. I have seen a lot of this happens a lot in call centers, actually. I've seen a lot of call center monitoring tools that they're tracking every which way, and they have so many spreadsheets and they have so many scorecards, and they're reporting on all these numbers, and they can't do anything about it. They're spending all their time monitoring. And so what I would encourage you to do is think about what will you be able to act on, and then narrow your focus there. There are tools for monitoring, social media. There are tools for monitoring sentiment analysis in both voice now and surveys and forums and all those things. There are tools for monitoring behavior. There are facial recognition tools now that monitor how are people really feeling when they're with you. There are so many tools out there. So really get clear on what are you trying to do and what will you be able to act on, and then narrow your focus there.
Okay, I think that wraps up our Q&A. We had a lot of really great conversation and questions. Thank you guys for that.
Yeah. Yeah, this was fantastic and so fun to come back this way for 2025. And we want to remind you again about our webinar coming up. You can use this QR code or use that link to go ahead and register. We'll be going into a little more depth on the ROI and how to get there. And then if you haven't already, we have something called the CXI Compass, which is where you can really answer a few questions, get some guidance on where to focus. It's based on our CXI Navigator framework. And one thing that I found is that it's really easy to, again, feel like everything's a priority. This might help you understand your priorities in a different way. Mm-hmm. And if you want to talk to us about your results, we love talking to you about your results too. So there's a way to sign up for that. And then I'm excited that this year, the first podcast episode this week of 2025 was our 100th episode. And for those of you who don't know Experience Action, this is the podcast where all I do is answer your questions. You leave me a voicemail at askjeannie.vip, and I answer one question every episode. We've had some fantastic engagement this first 100 episodes, and I can't wait to hear what you bring me next time. And then once a month, we have a special episode called CX Pulse Check, where I invite a special co-host from not just customer experience, but other industries as well. And we talk about some of the recent news that has happened in customer experience, things that brands are experimenting with, things that customers have noticed, that type of thing. We talk about 3 headlines usually a month. And so this month, we are excited to have Andrew Carruthers, formerly of Cisco, to join me for the episode, which will be released next week. So I encourage you to subscribe wherever you listen. It's also on our YouTube channel, so you can check out the videos as well. Paige, anything I missed?
No, I think you really wrapped it all up nicely. If you guys attend the webinar, which we hope you do, we would love to see all of your faces there. We will also be talking about CXI Compass and that survey. It's so very helpful to kind of look at things a bit differently. Maybe you're looking in one particular path, but finding a block. And this one really, we ask you a lot of questions. And then afterwards, you can even book a call with me and Jeannie and have a little one-on-one to go over your results. So we would love to do that with you guys. So please attend if you haven't already signed up, and we look forward to seeing you guys.
Well, I said in the beginning, we love this. We love interacting with you. We love showing up and hearing about all the wonderful things that you're doing, getting your fabulous questions, and hopefully supporting you in the really important and meaningful work that you do every day. So thank you for that. Keep up the great work. Keep throwing those questions at us. Let us know what you want us to cover next time, and have a great start to 2025. This is going to be a great year. I can feel it. So thanks, everybody. See you next time.